Okay, geographers, we seem to be up and running here. In this week's video, what I want to do is talk to you about data. Not even talk to you about data. You've at this point, where you've gotten to this video, I'm sure you've read a lot about data. I put a bunch of text up in Canvas about the different models for GIS data and things to think about and all that. This is going to be more of a practical introduction into where we can find data out online and bring it into GIS. All right, and this is by no means an exhaustive way to go about this, but I just wanted to have a very kind of direct, deliberate approach. We're going to focus on a specific area, deal with a variety of scales, which I believe I wrote about. You should be thinking about scale always when thinking about data. So yeah, we'll do that, and hopefully, there's a goal with this. This is why I do this too. And I've seen this with students in a variety of places, but students who have taken an intro to GIS class, even an intermediate one. Maybe they even consider themselves to be advanced GIS people, but one thing that all of their professors, instructors, whoever did for them was they supplied them with all of the data. They said, here you go. Here's what you need to do this thing. And so then if that student down the road is asked to create something from nothing, doesn't work. Whether it's, panic mode or you don't have the resources or whatever. And the reality is that if you're actually working in GIS out in the grown-up real world, not in this little safe learning environment, you're going to have to do that quite often. I mean, sure, maybe the company, the agency, whatever, maybe they have a collection of data that you're going to constantly use, but no matter what, you're going to have to create something that somebody asks for. You're just going to have to come up with it, and impress your boss or a board of directors or whatever it might be. All right, so I'm going to give you some skills so that you're able to do that. And this is always the goal. By the time you leave this class, you move on to perhaps other ones. You start working with this stuff, whatever it might be. You're going to impress everyone because there's nothing you can't do. Right? That's the goal. Whether we're bluffing or not, that's the goal. Okay, so that's the plan. So for now, to start with, open up your program here. GIS. And I'm saying it that way to try to get the auto captions to finally, once and for all, get something that resembles the program we are using. All right, so open that up, do a new map, and we're going to call this one Santa Monica. All right, in fact, and I'm looking at it, you know what? I'm not going to do it this way. So you see my South America, I did the lowercase and the underscore. I'm going to do that. Consistency, although opening, well, I'm going to go with this. Do whatever you want. All right, I'll hit OK. Let that do its thing. And then from here, once it does its thing, there we go. I'm done with it for now. I simply wanted to create that folder in my documents, documents, ArcGIS, projects, and then it'll say Santa Monica. We've got that folder, and now it's a space where any data I download, I can move it in there, right? Keep everything together. That's something we want to do. So I'll minimize that, and I have 4 websites pulled up, and I have links in Canvas so that you can go directly to these things. If you have any issues, and look, it's a case, especially with the United States Geological Survey, or USGS, they have been my nemesis since I started teaching GIS. It seems like they've changed not only, the content within the websites, but the actual URLs and all that, like once a semester. That's the feeling I get, because just when I think I've gotten everything settled, they change it. And all my students say, it doesn't work, I don't have this stuff. So if any of these links that you click on, they take you to something that doesn't look right, or it says, link not available or whatever, let me know. Communicate with me, we'll figure it out. But hopefully, you're watching this, it works, right? But communicate, please. Okay. So I have these 4 different links here. We're going to go through each one. And as I said, this is for a specific area. Clearly, we're going to be working with beautiful Santa Monica, California, and just doing that because we're doing it because I want to do it, because I used to live out there, and it was a great moment in my life. I've since retreated from the city, and I'm like a hermit in the mountains here, but Santa Monica, Venice, good stories. So based on that, that's going to be our area of interest. But honestly, if you're studying any part of the country, the world, whatever, you can kind of go through the same process. And I'll explain it as I go. But for examples, here I'm using Santa Monica. Okay, that's thing number 1. Thing number 2, we're going to be looking at simply roads. All right, highways and local roads and all that stuff for Santa Monica. But again, maybe you're not some kind of transportation geographer, or you don't need to do a project that incorporates roads in some way. Doesn't matter. The process is the same. And in fact, I know, having read through student introductions and all that, there is a good chunk of you who are criminal justice majors, or whatever the official name is there. So you're all cops, right? All narcs or whatever. So based on that, at some point, what I'll do is I'll get into crime data. I'll see what the LA Sheriff's Department has presently. Every now and then I pop in. It's not really my world, but I popped in mainly because crime data. They're a great way to freak people out, mess with students. So I like to use that stuff as examples. I'll incorporate that in some way in the content of this course to make it relevant for, I don't know, what feels like half of you. But again, no matter what your area of focus is, or of interest, or location, things like that, what I'll teach you are some principles that you can hopefully use in any field. Okay. Enough of the preamble, let's get into it. So this first site that we have here, it's the USGS. One of their sites, their website is massive, and they do a lot of different things, but one of their original missions and the purpose of this entity was to map the United States, to map every square inch of the country, starting in the 19th century and until today in the 21st century. And they've done a pretty remarkable job of it. All right? It used to be paper maps. Now it's more digital stuff. But that's an interesting thing with the USGS. They're old, or what we see on the screen here, where it says historical topographic maps. We're going to download one of these because I think they're wonderful. I've used them a lot in a variety of different capacities, so we'll see that. That's a good way to show one specific type of data. But these are clearly, they're scans, okay, of maps that were drawn by hand, okay, or at least not drawn in a GIS capacity. All right, in some cases, it's from the late 1990s. In some cases, it's from the early 20th century. We can go back to the 19th century in some cases, depending on where we're looking here. But incredibly useful. All right, so we have it in here. It says map, and this US Topo. This is the newer version. You're welcome to play around with it. We're not going to do that in here. But then we also have data, and so in here, I'm not going to demonstrate this today. I encourage you to play around with it. We might. I don't know. kind of figuring out the plan here. We might get into elevation products in this class, although that might be more of an intermediate kind of thing. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But there's that quite useful. This imagery here, and I'm referencing to this table of contents. If you drop down a few, it says imagery dash and then NAPE, and it's the National Agricultural Imagery Program or something like that. It's one of these many acronyms that we have. These are great aerial photos of all over the place. We're not going to download this, but it's something worth checking out. They can be massive, 1 to multi-gigabyte size files, but they're great. Resolution is great. You read about resolution in Canvas, but you can see, 1 meter to 1 foot resolution. So our grid cells, right? If we're talking about raster data, and if you're confused, well, that's your fault because you skipped straight to the video to try to get the work done. Go back, read this stuff. It'll help you make sense of this. But that 1 meter to 1 foot, it's talking about cell size, right? Talking about the actual raster grid cell. And getting 1 foot resolution, 12 inches by 12 inches, that's our pixel. All right, that's going to have one value, one color in this case, right? But when zoomed at the right level for the data, it's going to look beautiful. And we're going to be able to zoom in pretty nicely, and it's free, right? Free in the sense that your tax dollars already paid for it to be produced, and that's the great thing about this. We've already, in some capacity, paid for the data, because this is a public agency, so it's given to us for free, all right? Fantastic. And that's a word of warning. With any of this stuff you see here, and really data in general, when you start to search for data online, it's, at least in this class, you should never pay for data. And it seems to be less sleazy. When I was first starting out, a lot of this stuff was kind of new and Wild Westy. Plenty of companies that set up websites and they would charge you for data. And it turned out if you looked into it, you realize they're charging me for stuff that's freely available elsewhere, right? It was piracy is effectively what it was. So think about that. If you are, Googling stuff, don't pay for anything. Right? There can be reasons to pay for data, but we are not going to encounter those in this class, right? Everything you need should be out there for free, and that'll be really relevant when you start working on your final project. You're coming up with stuff, from scratch. All right, so okay. All right, that was, I think, more preamble, maybe some pep talk stuff. Let's not worry about that. Let's do this. In fact, in the search box, find address or place. I'm going to type in Santa Monica, California, of course. I don't recognize any of these other ones. There it is. There's my baby. Close that and see it in all its beauty right here. So we're in the right area. Okay. Now that we're zoomed into this location, we can do this search products thing over here on the left. All right, and I'm going to hit historical topographic maps. Got some options. I'm going to go with this 7.5 minute series. If you don't know what all this stuff means, don't worry about it. Don't stress over it. In here, if you are a geography major, you should know what these things mean before you finish your degree. Well, I'll say it that way. If you haven't taken like a map interpretation course, take it. Because at least when I teach these courses, we get into this stuff and get into these different kinds of maps and how to use them and really, and it's a way to make sure that you can get a job when you leave with a geography degree, because these maps, even the historic ones, so useful. Still so useful. All right, but for now, 7.5 minute, fantastic. We just check that. File formats, we have GeoTIFF and GeoPDF. I think I mentioned in Canvas how obnoxious it can be when people just add geo onto the front of stuff. It's like how all the sorts of software and phones and earbuds and stuff get the Pro label on it. It's the same thing with Geo. In this case, it simply means it's a TIFF image, right? Which is like a JPEG or some kind of digital image. It's just a different format, one that we use a lot in mapping. So it's a TIFF image, but it's one that has an actual reference system in there, so that when we try to bring this into the program, that was for autocorrect. When we try to bring this TIFF image into our program, it will know where in space, where on the planet this thing belongs, which is actually pretty cool. And we may get into what happens when you can't do that. I don't know if we'll do that or not in here. It's something called, get ready for it, geo-referencing. And so geo-referencing is where you take an image that doesn't have this reference already in there, and you tell ArcGIS where to place this thing. Maybe we'll get into it here. You'll encounter it at some point in some class you take. Thank you, Dell. Close that. I'll check you later. So that's what that is. In a GeoPDF, we don't want this for now. This would be a PDF file that we can open up, but it has some extra stuff in it. Things like you can turn layers on and off in some cases. It knows and some kind of like latitude and longitude coordinate system. If you have certain extensions, you can do that. That can be useful. You just need to look at the map. If we're doing GIS work, we want this GeoTIFF. Okay, so make sure these two things here are checked. And then I'm going to hit search products. And we'll see what happens. And it gives me a list. Okay, so 45 possibilities for this area. And as I scroll down, you can see, it shades the area. So the Beverly Hills map here, and we call this, it's a 7.5 minute series quadrangle. You can see here they say 1 to 24,000 scale quadrangle. That's this 7.5 by 7.5 thing we checked. Okay? But the name of this specific map, this one that covers this area, it's highlighted on our map. It's the Beverly Hills, California map. And the names come from, typically it's the most populated area in the map's extent. All right, and keep in mind too, at the time when these things were actually made. All right, because this date here, it's 1950. And we can go down. We have another one. It's 1950. Seems to be the same map. Colors are a little different here. Right, another 1950. Some of these are kind of repeats. But then we get into, 1966. That's still Beverly Hills, though, still the same area. I'm just scrolling down 95. Okay, so they update these things from time to time to represent changes. And then we get here to Sawtell. Okay, you can see same kind of general area here. And I think we have Venice below it, Topanga up in this area. So we could really pick any of these. I'm going to go with Sawtell. And I'm going to do an older one. All right, it's 25. Yeah, we're going to do this. All right. So yeah, this one looks good. 1925. Got the colors and all that. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to hit download link. I'm just going to left click, download link. And it does its thing. And it downloads that. And I've got, because I just bought this computer, I've got this thing loaded. It's making sure it's not riddled with viruses. Seems to be okay. All right, so we got that there. And we can, if you're using Chrome, we should be able to go to show in folder. Beautiful. So it went straight to my downloads folder, which I just emptied out to make it easy for these videos. So I moved stuff that I needed or deleted stuff or whatever. So I have nothing in here. You might have tons of stuff. It could be your South America stuff from last week. Other things you've downloaded can be kind of confusing, but this is mine. All right, so we've got it here, and it's just this single file. Okay, so Sawtell, 1925, 24,000. You can see recognizable things, but that .tif, beautiful. We got it. All right. I'm going to leave that. And I want to go through, I'm going to download stuff, all of this stuff together, move it then in, I'll leave it in downloads. I'm going to move it into my little ArcGIS projects folder. That's Santa Monica one I just made. We'll unzip things and look at all this stuff. Then we'll work on bringing it into ArcGIS. Okay, that's the plan. That's my methodology here for what we're doing. Okay, so got that. Now I'm going to go back here. So I'm done with the USGS for now. I encourage you to explore this, play around, but for now, we're good. Now this is, I should say, because I was talking about scale, we're dealing with stuff that's produced by a federal agency, right? So this is for the entire United States government, and it covers stuff from all over. So if we were doing this in Mississippi or Michigan or Maine or, I realize those are all M's, that's just in my brain, or Florida, there's one that's not M, or Montana. So I can't shut it off. But any of these M states or non-M states or, whatever, Minnesota. So with these, okay, I'll stop. I think I'm out. We could go anywhere. We could do that search. I could put anything in here and look all over the country. Okay, so this is at national level. And we have stuff that is at a nice kind of zoomed in scale, this 1 to 24,000. But nonetheless, it's done by a federal entity. Okay? The next one I want to go to is the California State Geo Portal. Not just a portal, but a geo one. It means maps. So, here's the deal. California's website used to be phenomenal. Used to love it. Then they got into this whole portal stuff, and you'll see some things that look similar. A lot of it is Esri itself is behind some of the infrastructure for this web-based, data sharing and cataloging and all of that. I'm not a huge fan of what it has turned into. That could just be me being a cranky old man. I used to make fun of people like this who hated progress. But honestly, I think it's lost something. But nonetheless, it's what we got. We'll go through here. So with this, unlocking the power, they take themselves very seriously. But with this, we've got, if you come down here, these different categories, right? This is one thing that kills me. Like, everything has to look like it's from a second grade classroom. Like, I couldn't see the word health and know what that meant without the little heart and the, heartbeat thing, whatever the medical term is for that. Come on. But what are you going to do? All right, so we could click on stuff. Like, I could click transportation, okay, because we're doing roads. It gives me 41 things, and I can scroll through. The problem with going this route is that some of it might be useful, some of it might not be. Like, I'm not interested in rail information, but that's, it comes up first. Truck volumes, commercial vehicle enforcement facilities, all of these things might be useful for something, but it means I got to scroll through. And I encourage you, if you're, into this stuff and want to learn more. This was something I did and still kind of do. Is I'll go to a site like this, and I will just scroll through, spend some time, see what's there, see if something triggers something, right? Or it could be a thing. If you're creating your final project, which, for this class, which I will talk about at length, I'll give you a full explanation of what I expect, how to go about doing it, either whether it's text or video, I don't know at this point, but a case where I'll get into it with plenty of time. Don't worry about it. But it's a case where if I say, okay, you need to make this final project for this class, and here's, the parameters and all that, but you pick the topic, you come up with the idea. This is a good way to figure it out. If you're stuck, whatever you're into, click on one of those categories and just kind of scroll through and see what's there. And you're like, oh, local bridges, right? And we also, wasn't there another bridge, state highway bridge? Maybe it's a bridge thing. Bridges are falling down all over this country. Maybe we want to look and see, where are these bridges See if we can get a sense. Maybe these have dates in there of when the thing was built. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. That's part of it too, is you've got to download it, see what's in that attribute table, see if it would be useful. But this is a way to think about these things, right? Or, traffic volumes. Maybe there's something there that triggers something, right? But the idea is just kind of scrolling through, be prepared to not find what you want. Okay? Now, as I was talking and just scrolling through, I did come across this national highway system. Sounds like it might be good. Let's click on that. Okay, and so if I click, yes, of course, you can't draw it, shocker. But in here, you'll see this. I think Santa Monica uses the same thing when we get to it. But you get a map. It should be drawing stuff. In fact, I wonder if I zoom in, will it draw? Doesn't appear to. It's okay. We don't need to actually see it. But you can click on, details of this thing. If I click on that, it gives me what we would refer to as metadata. Okay, and metadata, it's the way it was, it's always described, and I think the best definition of it is it's data about data. Meaning, it's giving you the background. It's giving, and this is very important stuff. It's not the sexiest part of working in GIS, but it is nonetheless important in that it tells us who made this thing, right? When they made it, the scale, possibly at which it's meant to be used, that kind of stuff. Was it updated recently, or has it ever been updated, or things like that, right? So that's what's here. So you could do this, especially if you're working on something specific. You need to know if this is going to work before you go in and waste the time downloading it and opening it up. You could look at this and say, oh yeah, this could in fact work, or oh no, this isn't what I thought, and I'm going to keep looking, right? So that's a good way to use that. Let me go back here. Yes, understood. So that's that. Some of the basic stuff is here. You've got this, I want to use this. It gives you some options, but this is really a case of if you don't have, ArcGIS Pro on your computer, right? This is for, dare I say it, this is for civilians, right? Which is not what you are. If you're watching this, no, you're part of the elite club. You, my students, are ArcGIS professionals, right? So you don't do this. What you do, don't do this, I want to use this thing. Instead, click on this download button. So we've got this thing kind of hovering over to the right. It's got the little cloud and the arrow pointing right to your computer. And so I left click on that. And it gives, oh, these errors are great. Is this even going to download? Let's see. We'll see. All right, here. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Well, we shall overcome. But what it gives us, CSV, that's a table, like an Excel table. We'll work with different types of tables. We'll see what this actually means. I don't know, like I usually do this stuff like week 6 or 7 or something like that. So we'll get to that, but we don't care about this right now. KML, that's Google Earth stuff. How about it? That can be useful, primarily if you're trying to create something you can share with people, freely disseminate. Google Earth can be great. But for us, what we're going to do, and this whole GeoJSON or JSON or however you're supposed to say it, the geo, silly. We're not going to mess with this. Okay, in here, what we'll use is the shapefile option here, right? And I mentioned in Canvas, getting the shapefiles and geodatabases, but I'll download a shapefile. We'll find a geodatabase as well, and I'll show you how these things kind of work, or some of the differences in here. So let's see if this works, even with our API error. That's not looking good. All right, let's try this. And this is part of the file. Yes, all right, what is going on? I hope the state of California is still with us. Is this thing going to work? All right, I tell you what. You know what? We don't even need. This is probably a garbage one anyway. Here's what we're going to do. So I just left-clicked on this ca.gov, the thing up here, to come to the beginning. All right, and what I'm going to do is just in search. Look, I've already playing around earlier. Let's just do streets. Let's see if anything comes up. Yeah, this SHN line, state highways. Let's try that one. Oh, see, that's okay. There we go. That's better. And this is just part of the, I'd like to take credit that I did this specifically so that you would see, what can happen. But I didn't. But the reality is, yeah, there's stuff like this where you find something, there's some issue with the server where it's being stored or the website itself or whatever, it doesn't work. Be prepared for that. That's part of the challenge. But this works. Seems to be, major streets at least or whatever throughout the state. You can see too, it's confined to the state because we're working in California. If I was doing something, a project on, the West or the Pacific Coast or something, and I needed Oregon or Nevada or Arizona or that stuff, it'd make more sense to be looking for all of this. Maybe just go to something like this USGS national map thing to start with, all right? But this Santa Monica, looking at California, cool, this will work. Same kind of deal, CSV, KML, shapefile. This one does give us a file geodatabase. I'm not gonna mess with that. We'll do shapefile, all right? And it says downloading an updated file may take some time. Okay, but with your download options, what you can do is you can say, you know what, I got time. I got nothing but time. So yes, set something up for me that is the latest, most up-to-date version of the data. Or it's saying download file previously generated on February 4th, which as I'm recording this was 2 days ago. I'm not thinking that really that many, streets were changed, updated, especially because we're dealing with, that was a Friday. This is the weekend. I don't think much has happened. So I can just go with this and be fine, especially because I'm just playing around, right? If this was something I were doing for a job, about a, reputation on the line and all that, yeah, I would generate something new. I would just be safe. But this, we'll just do that to make this go. It starts downloading. We're checking it for, Russian interference or whatever this actually is supposed to do. And so it downloads, and it's a zip file. Luckily, we're used to dealing with zip files. It's in. I can just make sure it should all be in here. Perfect. It's there. We'll leave that there. Okay, so there's my shape file that when I unzip it, bring it into the program, it should look just like this. Okay, voila. Now, let's move on to the county of Los Angeles. All right, so we're kind of zooming in, focusing in on our study area. But you can see all of this stuff is revolving around government entities of some kind, whether it's the federal government, and one specific agency within the federal government, whether it's the state of California, right? Something state level, county level, another great place to look. And again, whatever you're studying, wherever you're focused on, whatever your project is, whatever it might be, do this. These are great places to start on for some of the stuff. If what you're doing isn't necessarily, like I picked roads because it works and the stuff will be here and has been kind of my wheelhouse too, and a lot of the stuff that I've worked on, that's why I picked that. But it's a good way to kind of get a base map for stuff. Let's use the whole criminal justice thing as an example. You're going to show where crimes are taking place. You might not find it here. Maybe you can find it through here. I can't remember exactly what the sheriff's department does these days. But it's a case where, I can show crimes. I can just have points all over my map. But if I don't have streets, right, where they're located, where the stuff's actually taking place, or some of this other basic infrastructure, the map might not be useful. So that's another thing to think about. It's not just that the subject matter itself, it's finding the other elements that we put in there, right? Okay, so that's that. And the County of LA, they've had a pretty good track record for the last decade or so of having stuff up here and being useful. I'm just going to do this keyword search, but you can see if I scroll down, same kind of general idea in here. The problem, if you're clicking on some of this stuff, it can take you to things that aren't the data, themselves. But there, I just did a search for roads. Okay, LA County roads, My Street Classic, like this is one. You can see type web mapping application. I can click on that, I can zoom in. That's civilian stuff. That's not for us, right? We want actual data, something I can grab, bring down, put into my own stuff, and do my own thing with it. I'm not going to let, somebody kind of hold my hand through this stuff. I want the raw data. So you can see down here, this CAMS export data, which is our county-wide address management system. It's a file geodatabase. Yes. That's what I want. I'm going to left click on that, a little link. It takes me here, gives me some, what do we call this? Metadata. Okay, maybe not comprehensive, but it gives me some stuff I can look through. Oh, check this out. I want to view all. Okay, that's pretty nice. So in here, this is the format. We tend to see there are different conventions as to what exactly needs to be included. We can access this here. I'm also going to show you when we bring it into ArcGIS how to view this from within. Okay? But I can go down here, see some stuff. Some of this might make sense to you now, some of it might not. Look at that vector. That should look familiar for you at least. But it at least gives us some basic info, what we're seeing here. And one key thing, it's always useful, is you get that contact person, an organization, and all of that. I've relied on this a lot back when I was working in industry, having to figure stuff out, is I would in fact contact these people and say, okay, something doesn't make sense. I need some help. It's kind of the quickest way to figure out weird codes that are used in the attribute table or when it was last updated, if it's not clear on here or whatever. All right, so don't be afraid to look in here and actually contact these people. This person might not be there anymore. COVID's been rough for us all. But, maybe your email or your phone call or whatever will go to the person who's replaced the person who's listed there. Somebody can point you in the right direction. But don't be afraid to communicate with another human. And look, I know I was when I was working on stuff and generating data like this and sharing it with people. If I got a call and somebody was like, I want to use your data, I need to be, want to make sure I'm clear on this stuff. Like I was excited because it meant something I did was being used by someone. I was happy to talk to people. Don't feel like you're imposing on someone or anything like that. We are so tiny and insignificant, it feels, when we work in these government agencies and build this stuff. We're delighted to talk to anybody, whether it's a student or another professional or whatever. Okay, so utilize that. All right, so that's that. But up here, let's just hit download. See, there we go. Okay, another zip file. But this one is exporting this file geodatabase, and you can see it's pretty big, about 500 megabytes. This is LA County. It's this addressing system. When we unzip it, when we bring it in, it should be, I'm sure we'll have plenty of lines everywhere. I'll show you some of the stuff with that. But some of these are much larger than others. And that might mean that it's more useful for what you're doing, or some might be less useful or whatever. Right? But that seems to be humming along. We'll let that continue. While that's thinking, we'll go over here to Santa Monica GIS data. Again, all of these links are on Canvas. But so this is just the city itself. And here's something to think about too. Those of you doing this with the thought that, I might want to actually become a GIS person, a professional, right? You can see we have GIS people, whether it's entry-level technicians or analysts, specialists, managers, programmers, are kind of different levels that exist in here, but hired by the federal government, hired by the state of California, right, to help run that stuff at the state level or the county of LA, different agencies or specific cities, right? These exist all over, these different jobs. There are people who are creating and maintaining as well as using all of these data that we've been downloading and all this other stuff. So if you're, when you're starting to look for employment, these are places to look, right? Just something to say. And that's not even mentioning private entities, nonprofits, universities, colleges, a whole host of other realms, right? Okay, so there's that. My God, there's more of the, look at all these little pictures if we don't know what's going on. But again, let's just do streets. Search, of course. See this, and this is why I love Santa Monica. I mean, the ocean air and just the strolling around and wonderful memories. But I also love how uptight these people are. Backing out prohibited streets, right? Backing out is prohibited. Blah, 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 blah. Streets of significance. Yeah, that's. I bet that'll be useful. Yeah, street sweeping. Here's your streets. Oh, street center lines. We'll do this one. Okay, and so with street center lines, it's a case where with roads in general, we can measure them. In fact, this is a good opportunity to discuss the whole point line, polygon stuff when we're dealing with vector data. I think I referenced rivers. A river can be represented as a line because it's just this, linear feature on the landscape, but it also could be a polygon because while it has length, it also has width, right? You can have a very wide river, skinny river. Maybe a polygon is useful. Street center lines are where we represent a street as a line, as a linear feature, so it doesn't have a width, but we map it specifically. And this is, you can think about it. If you're on, the 405 at its widest, where you have multiple lanes of traffic, and that's a massive road there, right? But we can be focusing on just, one center line, maybe if it's just running, the middle of all of those lanes, right? Just the center of all of that. Or maybe we do individual center lines for I don't even know, like if you're coming over the pass and you're heading into, Sunset and UCLA and the VA and all that stuff. I don't even know. I haven't counted. The lines are, but let's just say we have 8 lanes of traffic, 4 going this way, 4 going the other way. We could have center lines for each individual lane, right? But the idea is we measure it off the center. So we know exactly where this thing is aligned. And so a street center line file for a city government like this, we would hope anyway that it's going to be very accurate in the actual placement of these. So this will be a good one. I'm going to left click on that. But this would be a good one to download and to compare against some of these other ones, right? The one from the state of California. We can look at this historical topo map that we got. We'll compare all of this stuff and see. This should all look familiar and it's similar to what we saw for California. So we just hit this download. CSV came all the same stuff. We're going to go shapefile. Let's see, this one was from December 27th. That would be one where I might, generate a new one. But at the same time, I got stuff to do. We don't want to sit around and do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that one. Okay, that download seems to be good. Okay, so I have 4 different things. And this is good. Some different types of data, but all around the same spot. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm done now with downloading things. I'm going to go here into my downloads folder. I've got all this stuff. Beautiful. And then I also have this documents one up. Onto my other screen. Let me bring this over. But if I go into ArcGIS and projects, all right, and what do they call this? Santa Monica, right here. Okay, what I'm going to do, and there are different ways I can do this, but just to make it easy for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything here and then just left click and drag into my Santa Monica folder. Okay, so I just, let me do this again. I mean, you could do a few different ways. To be really proper, I could left click once on street center lines, hit shift, hold shift, left click down on this California Sawtelle one. It grabs everything. That's one way to do it. When you're feeling reckless, you can just kind of left click, hold. You start doing this whole rectangle thing. I get everything. I go that way. Cool. However you're going to do it, right? And then I'm going to left click and hold. I'm going to drag it over to this other, the Santa Monica folder in the projects thing. And then I'll release over here. And it moves it over there. Okay, it takes it out of my downloads, puts it into this place where I know this is where I'm going to be working. And it's, as you see, when we start unzipping stuff and all of that, this is good. Okay, this is what we want. All right. Let's see. I think what I'll do, I'm going to go back here to Santa Monica, okay, in ArcGIS, just so it's not too confusing. I'll expand that, and I'm going to go up here, my little ribbons or whatever. I'm going to click on Map, okay, Add Data. This is what I'm going to do to start with. And it gives me some different options. Say it's looking in downloads. It's probably the last place I was pointed. It's empty because I moved everything, but that's okay. I'm going to go to project up here, folders, Santa Monica. Okay, that's my main space. Now we only see that California Sawtelle, blah, 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 blah. That's all. Those zip files don't show up, and that's because Esri has not, gone through to make zip files recognizable. Yeah, and there might be some good reasons for that. I don't know. It can be. I find it just frustrating. Same thing with things like PDFs. Certain things just aren't visible to ArcGIS Pro, whereas other things are. So the zip files, they're still there. In fact, let me just to prove it. Go back here. So this shn_lines.zip, street_centerlines.zip, all that. It's there, not viewable, not visible. This happens all the time. It confuses me all the time. I get hung up on it, but I'll be working and I go, I knew I had something like this that I downloaded or whatever. Double check, right, in the actual Windows File Explorer thing. This thing here. Double check that it's there. Maybe you didn't unzip it. Maybe it's a file type that doesn't work, something like that. But that's something. Another thing that can happen, we might see this as I go through here, is that it doesn't automatically think to look elsewhere on the computer or keep updating stuff or whatever. So sometimes if something's missing, hit this little refresh, that circle arrow thing up here, and sometimes stuff will pop up, right? In this case, not really useful because the zip stuff, it's not going to be seen. But we do have this TIFF file, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's thinking, yeah, here we go. You'll get these windows that pop up. Calculate statistics for blah, 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 blah. The Sawtelle file. Basically, these are, if you ask it to do this, what it's going to do is do a little work. And effectively, it's saying here, statistics allow for a better display. It's going to do some work behind the scenes. Doesn't really affect you. But a lot of these, it might make a new little file that gets stored in the same place. I would just typically say, yes, go ahead. This would only really be an issue if you're worried about like space on your computer, but no, I don't think this is going to be an issue. You're welcome to, if you want, always use this choice. I never really do that because I do kind of like to be asked repeatedly about this stuff just to keep it in mind. But I'm going to say yes. Go ahead and do it. Not going to hurt anything. But, oh, beautiful. Look, there's my Sawtelle map. Okay, and you can see more or less, we've got the coastline here, and it kind of follows with the map itself. And so this is placed in the proper geographic location. That's that whole GeoTIFF concept that we've got. So that's wonderful. And if I zoom in, I can come in here and see You know, there's Santa Monica Bay, the pier, promenade, all of this stuff in there. Okay, and this, what was it, 1925? Yes, edition of 1925, reprinted in 1931. And we've got the little 1960s stuff that might have been, like, I don't even know. This is like internal stuff, right? Because this was just an actual map with the USGS that they scanned. And you can see, you know, evidence of how it's been used. It's kind of, I think that's cool. Little historical artifacts on here from the actual use. But cool, we've got that actual map in here. All right, so that worked. Okay, good. We'll leave that like that. Now let's go back to our folder. Aha! So check this out. We have this little auxiliary file in there. I don't know specifically if that is our statistics or something else. I don't remember all the details of these extra files that get produced. But here's the deal. As you start working with this stuff and you start to see things that exist that have the same name but a different file extension. All right, let me drag this stuff out here. You want to keep these things together. So let's see. I download this, but I know I'm going to constantly be working in this area, and I'm going to constantly want this historical map. Use it for a variety of projects. So I'm not just going to save it in here. I'm going to have some like master repository, some place on my computer where I save all this stuff. So after I'm done with this, I'm going to move it, right, to whatever. So if I do that, I just want to make sure I copy both of these, right? Anything that has the same name but a different file extension, keep it together. All right, whether it's this TIFF file or, let's see, which one was it? I think it was this one, was this shape file. So I'm going to right click on SHN underscore lines. I'm going to go to show more options if you're a Windows 11 person. So I get my 7-zip in here because that's the one I like using. Now I want to keep it in here. You can make the call as to, do you just extract it here? Do you extract it to a separate folder or whatever? I'm just going to put extract here. And it does its thing. There we go. And the thing shows up. So in here, it just put this shape file. Okay, now a shape file is a form of GIS data that exists. It's you can only have one, how do I put it? It's one feature class, right, which I think I wrote about in Canvas. But it's the idea that like this one, it's a line feature class, right? You can't have, you know, some of the stuff in there is lines, some of it's points, some of it's polygons. Everything in here, it's just lines, and it's all the same road shape file. All right, so you can't have a bunch of stuff in one. You would have, if I had, let's say, roads, and then railroads, and waterways, and points of interest, and all these different things, those would be individual shape files that I would have to download individually and unzip individually and all that. Okay? But you note it gave us what? 5 new files in here. All right? One is, you know, .shx, .shp, .prj, .dbf, CPG. All of these need to be kept together because a shape file is actually a combination of anywhere from 3 to about 8 or 9 different files. All right, and if you take one of those away, it's not going to work. You're going to screw everything up. Right? So just be aware of that when you're downloading stuff. And again, let's say I need to move this, right? Or I decide it's getting too messy. Even within here, I want to make a new folder, right? That just is like data or something like that to keep that all in there, and so I don't get confused. If I do that, I need to copy or cut or whatever. I need to move each of these 5 files. Keep them together in the same place. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay? But this is in Windows. If I come in here, I'm going to click Add Data. All right, and I'm looking in here. I don't see it, right? But if I hit refresh, boom, find some other stuff. And I've got this highway underscore SHN underscore lines dot SHP. All right. It's what it's doing in ArcGIS. So it's taking these 5 separate things. It's only showing them us as one. In this case, that .shp one, but all of them are there. But it's just saying, hey, you got this shapefile. Right? So it's a way for our own human eyes and brains and all that to make sense of it. So all of these 5 things are there. ArcGIS knows it. It's able to display this as a single shapefile because those 5 different files are there. And it also says shapefile right there, right? And you've got this green icon. That's the traditional shapefile color with all this stuff. It's got that little line thing with the 2 sticking off of it. That means that it's, if it didn't say lines on there, if we didn't know what it was, we would still know this is a line shapefile because of that icon. For a point one, it'd have this little point icon. Polygon, have a little polygon thing, and so on, right? So if you know what you're doing here, you can kind of decipher some of these clues. But I'm going to go ahead and add that. Whew, look at that. Got some lines in here, some green lines. Might be kind of hard to see. Feel free as you're bringing stuff in. I do this all the time. Change the color so it really stands out. Like this is a pleasant green, but let's get something a little more aggressive here so I can see it. And so when I zoom in, I can see that against the, the map itself underneath here. And you can see some things kind of line up here, others don't. In this case, a lot of the stuff, didn't clearly exist. Some things might have changed in here, but that's kind of interesting, right? That's a cool study. That's one of the ways in which I've used these historical topo maps is we've looked at how have things changed in an area over the last 50 years, 100 years, whatever it might be, right? But we can see that. They're still in the same general space. Okay? We're looking at Santa Monica stuff, and if we remove this or uncheck it, we can see it lines up, more or less with what we have on this base map that we've got. Maybe we're missing, right, some of the on-ramps and off-ramps and all of that stuff. But again, think about that. This is something we took from the state of California, right? I believe. And what we can do, I'm going to right-click on this in the contents window. I can go to Zoom to Layer. And that takes me out to the full extent of the layer. And sure enough, let's just take off this topo map, even the hill shade, and just look at that. We can see the state of California in there. All right, so because this is for the, the scale, the state of California, roughly, we look down here on the left, this 1 to 8 million scale, effectively, right? It's a case where you don't want to have every little on-ramp and off-ramp. It's going to get confusing. It's going to make this thing slow to load because it's such a much bigger file size and all that. So at this scale, it works. So when we zoom in, and I've shown you some of the ways to zoom in. Another thing you can do is down here you can change. If I click this little arrow thing, I can pick specific ones. Like let's do 1 to 24,000. Common one. I'm probably out in the ocean somewhere. In fact, well, now I'm lost. I'm horribly frightened. Hold on. So that 1 to 24,000 and more. Okay. It'll just set me into mountains. Let me do this. Let me go here. See, it's thinking. It's working hard. Recording this video and all that. Let's get out of the Central Valley. No offense, Central Valley. Looks like the grapevine. Here we go. Let's go into God's country here. So from here, let's do 1 to 24,000. And let's let this catch up. Go get a snack. Okay. Wow. So yes, again, we zoom in, and you can see this is exactly what I wanted to see. This little interchange thing here, not displayed. So again, this is the idea of scale. Maybe it's important to have that. Maybe it isn't. But there you go. Something to think about. But let's downy schmowny. Let's get to the coast. All right, let me do this. Everything is whirring and struggling, and with the video, it's slowing stuff down. Oh, I didn't turn that back on yet. There we go. Okay, so we're back to our general Santa Monica area. In fact, I'm going to hit save, because why not? It's feeling like with the struggling, like something might crash here. All right, so that was that one. Let me close that. Go here, back to my folder. All right, I have two more zip files, the center lines and this export.gdb. Let's go ahead. If you haven't already, unzip these. Show more options, 7-zip. I'm just going to put extract here. Some of the bigger ones will take a little longer. Just thinking. Can't go get a drink. Whatever. Potty break. There we go. Okay, we're good. So I got that one. And what was the center lines here? And let's see, how was saying it's quiet? Is that because I wasn't talking? Hopefully you can hear me. If not, that'll be interesting. All right, so in here, okay, a few things now. We've got street center lines, again, shapefile thing. So it's got these individual ones in there. Another thing, you can see this one we've been working with. As we've been working with it, these new files have been created. Some of them are this, well, okay, they're all these lock files in here. This will happen when I have it in the map itself and I'm using it. It puts in this lock file so that I can't move it, change it, or somebody else who's on the same network can't get in and change or destroy this stuff. So that just happens. When I close ArcGIS, those should go away. Those should vanish. So those are like temporary things here. Okay, this export.gdb, it turned into this LA County CAMS. Remember, it was that, what was it, countywide address management system or something like that. And so these file geodatabases, I think I showed one of these before. It's a folder. It has that .gdb on the end. If you double click, it gives you all sorts of scary, confusing, weird things, but we don't have to worry about it. This is one nice thing about dealing with the geodatabase is other than as opposed to the shapefile thing, all of these separate files that make up the thing, they're all tucked away neatly in this little folder. So if I need to move this one, just right click, copy, cut, whatever it might be, and place that elsewhere, it should be fine. Right? So it kind of puts everything together, makes it a little easier for humans to mess around with it. Okay? So we got those. I'm going to go back here to the map. All right, we're going to go to add data. Again, we're going to hit refresh because it doesn't know to look. Okay, I'm going to add, let's see, I'm just going to add street center lines. I'll hit OK. Cool. You can see that stuff shows up in the right place. And this whole idea of things showing up in the right location, we're going to talk about that, I think, next week. I'll be getting into this whole idea of projections and coordinate systems, how we know where stuff goes, how to mess with this stuff and all that. I think that's next week, maybe the week after. I don't know what I have planned. But yeah, just be aware of that. Okay, so did that. Go back to add data. Okay, in here, the geodatabase, what I want to do is I want to double click in here, and it's going to take me inside. I'm going deeper into it, and I've got a lines and a points option. I'm just interested in lines for now to compare with this other stuff, so I'm going to hit OK. I want another thing, and you can see this is countywide, but you can see the detail. Sorry, it was so big. But another thing just to point out, yeah, same thing like with the shape files, the line icon, points icon, you can see those three little dots in there. Yes, this says lines and points, but if it didn't say that, if it just said CAM's address and CAM's address 2 or something like that, I could look at this and go, okay, I want street lines, so yeah, I want this first one, right? Or I want to deal with actual address points, so I'm going to want the one that has the little points icon. So it's just how to think about this and read this stuff. But check this out. Look at all the data. And if we go in, I mean, it's frightening. Look at this spaghetti mess. It clearly wasn't there in the 20s. But look at that. And let's even go here. I mean, that one, let's just make, I don't know, what'll stand out? Maybe make this one red. And a palm, well, that's red and green. That's not responsible for people who are colorblind. Let's do a blue. Apologies if you can't really, I can't really see this as well. You're not missing anything if you can't. In fact, let's do, just to make it clear, do a 2-point there. Change this one to a 2-point line width as well. And this is, I just clicked. I don't know if I was clear about this or if you're already hip with this stuff, but you can just left click on these little swatches here. I could also go right click and go into symbology. Here would bring me to the same pane over there. And so this one, I'll make that 2 points. And let's make this like an orange. Okay. So those, we can see a lot going on here. But this is something I think is interesting and a good example of data and how data work here, right? What on earth are we looking at? If we put this base map underneath, it's a case where you can kind of see what's happening in here. Some of the stuff kind of works, some of it maybe doesn't. The blue, now these are our street center lines. This is Santa Monica City data, right? We would hope that that's actually accurate. In fact, I would trust what the city's doing versus this massive, base map that's covering a bigger area. But I don't know. One thing we could do, instead of that, the world topo thing, we could do this imagery one. Get a sense of, what does the aerial photo show? And in some cases, maybe it doesn't show much. Maybe it's kind of, it's even more confusing. You're trying to make a sense of where exactly the road is. This looks like, and if you zoom in, that kind of works. I mean, that might be the center line in there, but that's some of the fact checking that we can do. These aerials can be useful. And if we were to go back to this, I remember I mentioned, in fact, let me go clear results or data sets. Let's get out of here. This NAPE imagery. This would be an example. If I need to check this stuff and really see what's happening in an area, getting high quality aerial imagery of Santa Monica would be useful. Stuff that's going to be better than this free stuff that we have, right? Oh, and look at this. Oh, this is son of a gun. Which one is this? This is the address lines one. Interesting. This makes me wonder. It's been a while with the pandemic and all, since I've actually been driving through Santa Monica. I don't remember a curvy, wacky street like this that also goes away. This, to me, this says I had GPS running and some of these tall buildings screwed up my signal, maybe, or something like that. I could be wrong, but that's interesting. But here's the deal. The whole point of this, what I want to show, is that we can find data from a variety of places. Not all data are the same. And that was the point with the whole planning notification maps that I get into in Canvas. We got to think about, from where are the data coming? Is it a case where, it's something like we trace stuff off of these existing maps and we build it off of here, right? Maybe that's good, maybe not. Maybe the maps come from the 1920s and stuff has changed, so it's not actually useful. Maybe it's not this case. Maybe we do use something like GPS and it seems very technical and fancy until we get the wobbly lines in here, right? Again, I don't know. In fact, let's see. Here's a good thing to do. Right click on that CAMS one. All right. This again is a case if you're trying to figure out what to do or can't remember how to do something to a specific layer in here, right click on the thing and you might be able to figure it out. Come down here to view metadata. Left click that. Okay, way to go, county. So what it did, you notice our map goes away, but it doesn't really. Okay? It's still here. It's, in fact, if I left click on that, map is there. But it opened up this catalog window. So not just the catalog pane, but it made it this more all-encompassing thing. And what it should do is show us all this information that the county people put in here so that we could figure out, what's going on with the wobbly streets, and they didn't do anything in here. Although, from what I remember, that was the one I think we looked at, where it had the actual person and all of that. Like, if we're really bothered by this, if we need to know what's happening here, track it down. Go back to the website where you downloaded the thing from, see what's there. But typically, this should have all sorts of information. Some of it's automatically populated, like this spatial reference stuff, but other useful things not necessarily in there. Yeah, you might get to, let me see, no, it doesn't have it at the bottom. You can get, from time to time, it'll say like, it's the item description version. To change this, go to options, something. If you get that, if you want something that looks like this or some of these other possibilities, if you left click on project over there, and come down here to options, you've got options. But if we, down here, metadata, mine is set to this FGDC. I think it defaults to item description. Which is just going to look a little different. We have a lot of these are different entities have different requirements for metadata standards and all that stuff. This is just based off of this. Doesn't really matter for a lot of what we're doing. If I go back here, in fact, just item description and I hit OK, and I go back here, still the same kind of deal. There's nothing there, right? So it doesn't matter. In fact, this is what I was referencing and saying, hey, you're seeing this, you want to change it? That's in your projects, options, all of that. Right? In fact, let's just go here. Let's see how Santa Monica's doing. Let's do view metadata. Son of a gun, these are, shame on them. Come on, state. Oh, that's not good at all. Yeah, there's nothing. And the reality is, and I suppose I could have just done it this way. The reality is, too, it's a case where you're busy when you make, you don't have time. You're supposed to do it, but you don't have time. I'm curious if it shows up. Let's just do that one. Yeah, and we got nothing in here. But it's okay because there's stuff online. But you get the idea. This is how to view metadata. All right. We downloaded stuff. Now let's get into what I want you to do to prove that you actually suffered through this video and you worked on it, right? Okay. So, let's do this. Let's create a new layout. Whatever you want to do here. And here's what I want you to do. In fact, sure. Let's put that in there. All right, what I want you to do, in fact, I don't want this. Come on, Sawtell. I want you, find an area in here. I mean, pick it, make it look good. I just had this random thing in here, and I did these colors, but it might be easier on the coast here or something, but pick something like this orange right now with this map I'm seeing. I don't like it. Spend some time in here, but find an area where you can show some of the differences in here, right? These different layers. Make these distinct, these different things. And in fact, what I'm going to do, what I want you to do, let's do this. Making this up as I go. Right click, on any of these layers, go to properties. Okay, and so instead of the name cams underscore address lines, I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm going to put LA County roads. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. Now this doesn't change anything. If I go back here, all right, it's not changing the cams. It's not going to affect anything there. It's a label, but it's something that actually makes sense. I'm going to go properties. I'm going to call this one roads. This one, let's see, I'll just do California roads. I think I got that right. Yep. Okay. And then I'll leave this one for now. But what I did here is I went to make it, legible. And so that way, in my layout, I'll have this all set up. Go through, make sure it's clear so I can see stuff. But I want you to insert a legend. Click that. Okay, down here. Go ahead, just pick, whatever. Any of these. You can experiment with the different types. I'll just do this first one. Okay, and it's a case where, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reject this. Hold on. Escape. Let's see. Delete. Doing. Normally I would have this really planned out and that'd be good. Not today, baby. What I want you to do your little rectangle thing. Okay, just somewhere out of the way. Okay, and with this rectangle, I'm going to come here. I can do properties. Right, symbol. I don't want it see-through like that. I want it to stand out. Pick something so I can see it. Right, but again, I get in this habit. In fact, I like to kind of, hover a little bit. And then I'm going to do my legend. And I'll do this one, and I'll kind of draw it, in this general area. Okay, but when you can see what it does, let me zoom in here, is it gives my different layers. LA County roads, Santa Monica roads, California roads. And so in doing this, in naming it something that's actually human over here, not computer code or whatever, and underscores and all that, it automatically, that's what it shows on the legend. So it's much more legible, it's easier to read. Now it does have stuff, well, it's got issues with it. First off, number one rule. I think they do this just to piss off people like me. And this is something I was taught, but it's something I've held on to. You never put legend on your legend, right? It's the same thing as we don't put map on our actual map, or we don't put a north arrow, and we're like, well, let's put north arrow on the north arrow. No. So get rid of legend. You can just get rid of it, have nothing. Oh, did it? Son of a, hold on. There we go. Isn't that going to let me? Cannot be, oh, wait, it's the title here. Okay, we can call this legend. You can see how often I actually use the legend. Wait, there we go. Oh, and I screwed up. Okay, oh well. Oh, okay. All right, fine. We're going to call this show you stupid. That's what we'll call it. Yeah, okay, that works. Okay. So we get rid of that. Number one. All right. Also, let's go through. You can cycle through, like with all this stuff, and see what's in here, right? We can get into text symbol, right? So think about what actual font is being used. We don't want Tahoma. Where is it? I want to go, again, I don't mess with these enough. Oh, is this where I have to? Oh, here's where I do it now. Okay. Sorry, folks. There we go. I just uncheck it over here, right? I don't want that sawtell thing in there because it's kind of weird. It's doing this whole red, green, blue band image thing. That's confusing and weird. So I'm going to uncheck that one. So I just have the roads themselves. Now what you can do, what you can do and what I want you to do is, move this stuff around, have your little legend thing something like that, just so it's clear which ones I'm looking at. Then I want you to get some text in here. All right, however you do it that way. What's the easiest way? Again, I usually do this stuff elsewhere. When I'm making stuff, but we'll stick with what Esri gives us. So, have like a data source or sources, right? And you can say like LA County roads and list. You can give the URL. You can say the general, and this one, right? So this whole CAMS thing, EGS, if we kind of go back out, for now, we can just do this main thing, County of Los Angeles Enterprise GIS would be perfectly adequate for my, for the county roads thing. City of Santa Monica, State of California, just commas in there. You can have, base map, 1925 Sawtell USGS quadrangle. What looks really sharp is when you do all of this stuff, right? County of Los Angeles, Enterprise, GIS, City. Oh, see, now look, here's an issue, right? Got a problem there. That's not looking good. We can do a few things. We can just kind of do a hard return in there, right? I could do something like that, just if I'm trying to move quick, trying to do that stuff. Let me click out of that. We should also, this rectangle text, what I can do, right? I can do it this way, and I can do the same thing. Data sources, a bunch of different places from around the web. And you can see it does that for us. It just takes, planning ahead of time, right? So however you do it. But my point being, put your data sources in here, all right, and it'll look cool. And you can make this smaller. Like this is probably Tahoma, 10, 8, what do we got here? Yeah, Tahoma 10. Don't do Tahoma. Get out of it. Use something that's just not that. Even if it looks kind of similar, just don't do it. But also, don't do, nobody's done this so far from what I've seen, but like the old timey stuff or whatever. If we apply that, like that doesn't work for what we're doing here. Find something that's simple, clean. The Swiss, I've been using that one a lot. Just clean, kind of neat stuff. You can change the data source stuff. It doesn't have to be the big focal point. I could drop that down to a 7. I could italicize it, kind of make it like that. Look at that. And so it's a little smaller. It's out of the way. I can see that if I need it. If I'm curious about, if I'm, just a map reader, I got that stuff off to the side, but it doesn't take up everything. All right. So play around with the actual font. Let me get rid of that. I tell you what, to give you a little more guidance in here, do that there. And I'll do this one, and I'll call it something that makes sense. Different road data for Santa Monica, California. Right, so I'm going to have my title right there, and I could have that big and centered. I'm not going to let it be Tahoma. In fact, what you want to do, typically, if I use that Swiss one, use something either the same one, or if you have a bunch that are kind of similar, like use the same general family. Right? Maybe I make this 12. Maybe it's not going to work out. I don't know. Maybe I make it just bold. Like, let's see. It kind of overruns, but I can adjust it. All right, but I have some big title in here. Make it fit. I could just abbreviate California even more. I could do a return. I could have it, 2. In fact, let's just do that to make it all fit in here. Okay, right. I can also symbol. Sorry, some of this is my own, attention and neuroses. Let's see, this one, yeah. Position, horizontal, we'll center that. Apply. right? But I'd have some, you work on it. You make it look good, right? I would take this in here, right? The legend stuff. I'm going to match the actual text. So if we go into text symbol, no, I don't want Tahoma. Enough with the Tahoma. I'm going to pick one of these things. I'll just do the same thing, right? And just hit apply, and it changes that. And it gets in here. It has different things because there are different elements I can turn on and turn off. If I'm happy with that, cool. If I want to force it all to 10, 8, 12, whatever, I can play with that. All right, but experiment with some of these different things. And you can get in here, I forget where it is, and don't get too wacky. I would say that, let's see, the border stuff, I encourage you not to use border background. Instead, just do this rectangle. It's easier. It's simpler, gives you more control. There's a way in here somewhere you can play with the swatches. You can make like the lines curvy or something. Again, I don't mess with this enough. Let's see, is it this one? Show properties, patch alignment. Now I'm kind of, well, it's in there somewhere. Playing around with it. I don't care enough with this stuff. I hate the legend thing, but still, it's good to have. It's important to do. It's an easy way to automate this stuff. But so what I want from you, okay, just to make sure it's clear, all right, these different data files, okay, the USGS base map, the Sawtell one, and the 3 different road layers, symbolize them in a way so they stand out. So like my orange, if I were turning this in, I would change that because I think the orange blends in too much with the that base map, right? It kind of disappears in there. And zoom into a spot. You can do it. I don't care what the scale happens to be. For this specific one, it's 1 to 6,291. Right? We'll worry about scale a little bit here in future things, but just kind of zoom into an area you think looks nice, right? Symbolize all this stuff. Give me title, legend, the data source stuff. Go ahead, slap your name on it just to make sure it's clear. But once you've done that, you're happy with it. You're like, yes, I downloaded stuff and I made something that even though all these lines are a mess, it's still a good cartographic product. Once you've done that, well, first off, my God, hit save. Haven't done that for a while. But then go into share, right? Export layout, save it as a PDF. Make sure you're saving it in a place where you can find it. I would recommend in the actual project folder itself. All right, you can leave all this stuff the same. Hit export, upload that to the appropriate spot in Canvas, and you're good. All right, geographers. Best of luck. Happy mapping. Until next time.